Hello everyone, today I will show you how to set up your Netgear router, RS400. And before I begin, I want to remind you that if you found this video helpful, please buy me a drink. Every pint of beer helps me in the creation of more valuable content for you. So, the first step is to power on the router. Connect one end of the power adapter to a wall socket and the other end to the router. Then press the power button. Once it's on, an indicator will light up. It may take a few minutes for it to completely turn on. Now, connect a cable from your broadband provider or from your modem to a special internet port. This port is often called internet and is usually a different color. Each cable should be inserted until it clicks into place. Now, you need to reset the router to the factory settings. Press and hold the reset button on the router for 10 seconds until the indicator lights on the router begin to flash. Sometimes, the button is located inside the router casing to avoid accidental pressing. In this case, use a thin object to press on it. The router will reboot, and the settings will return to the factory defaults. Plug one end of the Ethernet cable provided with the router into a LAN port. Plug the other end into your computer or laptop's Ethernet card. Please wait a few minutes for connection. Great, the router is now connected to your computer. Now, you will need to set it up. But before we begin, I will demonstrate an alternative way to connect the router if you don't have an Ethernet cable or your computer doesn't have an Ethernet port. Just connect the router to the power adapter and the cable from your internet provider. This will enable Wi-Fi. If the router is new and has never been configured, the Wi-Fi network will be named as your router. Your router has a unique Wi-Fi network name and password that is printed on a label. Connect to it. Great, you've connected to the router. Now let's start setting it up. First, open your browser and go to the URL you see on screen. Use the address bar instead of the search bar. At the beginning, click here. Then read Netgear terms and conditions and click I agree button. Now you must select No. I want to configure the internet connection myself. And click Next button. And then click OK. If your router's settings do not look like mine, it means that your router has a different firmware. I made a video for each kind of firmware. You can find all the links in the description down below. The first thing you need to do is set up a new password. The password for the administrator is used for logging into the web interface of your router. Pay attention to the password requirements. Type new password in the first field and duplicate password in the second field. Next, select 2 security questions and write answers to those questions. You will need them in case you need to reset the admin password in the future. Click Next. The next page will display the information needed to connect to a Wi-Fi network. If you want, you can print them out. Click Next button. If you haven't updated your router in a while, the next page might automatically start updating the firmware. If a newer version is available, I recommend updating the firmware. It will take about 3 minutes for firmware update. Please, do not turn off the power or press reset button. If the new firmware is not available, just click OK. After updating the firmware, you may be redirected to the Netgear website, where you can register your router. If you want it, you can do it. I won't do that, so I'll just close this window. Log into the router's web interface again if you were logged out of it. Enter the standard username, admin, and password that you created a few minutes ago. Press Sign In button. In the upper right corner, you can change the language of the router's web interface. To get the internet, go to Advanced. Setup Wizard. Press No. I want to configure the router myself. Then press Next button. On the next page, choose the internet settings. In most cases, there are two options, connection with and without a login. Almost always, your internet connection will not require a login. Check your contract with your internet provider for this information. If your internet connection does not require you to log in, or if you are not sure whether you need to log in or not, select No. Leave account name and domain name unchanged. Then in Internet IP address section, choose Get Dynamically from ISP. In the DNS section, select Get Automatically from ISP as well. If your ISP only allows internet access to a specific MAC address, you need to clone the MAC address of the primary computer. Select Use Default MAC Address if you are not sure about these settings. Check again that your settings are the same as mine. And click Apply. Most of the time, it's unnecessary to copy the MAC address. But if you can't get the internet connection after quick setup, later, in the video, I will show you how to clone MAC address. Now you need to reboot the router. Go to Advanced. Advanced Home. Click on the Reboot button. And click OK. After the reboot, wait a couple of minutes and try to Google something. If it's failed, then check all the cables. They must be connected correctly. Then log into the router control panel again. Go to Basic, Internet, and choose Use Computer MAC Address. Click Apply button. And then, reboot router again. Check your internet connection after a few minutes. That's all. If my video was useful, please support my work. You can buy me a coffee. I donate 50% of all coffee's purchases to animal shelters. Details can be found in the description below.